Hello, folks, and welcome to Happy Hour at the Warming House. Hey, Fred, how are you?
I'm doing well. I forgot to get a cocktail.
Oh yeah, I know. I have a fizzy water.
Yeah, I
I've
just
got
got
going
regular water in a mason jar.
here. Well, hey, so happy to have you here, and I'm gonna just tell folks a little bit about the Warming House, and then we'll you and I will talk for a bit, and then gonna set you loose to play a bunch of songs. So,
Heck yeah. All right.
all right. Well, great to see a number of you online here. Thanks for being here. Be sure to comment on whatever format you are, YouTube or Facebook. I think we're on both right now. But just be sure to comment and let us know that you're out there. So the Warming House is presenting these shows every day in May at 4 o'clock. This is our May Soiree. Kind of rhymes there if you say soiree right, and often I don't. But,
Soiree.
So the purpose of these is to check in with you all every day at 4 o'clock and to celebrate the fact that May is the birthday month for the Warming House. We turned 4 years old this year, and so 4 years old, shows at 4 o'clock. Pretty cool, huh? So these shows are part music, part chatting. I'm gonna talk with Fred for 5 or 10 minutes and find out what's going on with him. At some of these shows, sadly not today, we're gonna have some guest bartenders that might help you mix up a cocktail or a non-alcoholic beverage of some sort to help you on this 4 o'clock happy hour show. So yeah, tune in for more of these shows. Lots of great shows coming up all week and all month. And you can see the schedule of shows on the Warming House's Facebook page. And yeah, just come back every day, and we'd love to see you. The Warming House is a small listening room in South Minneapolis. We do about 150 ticketed shows each year. We also do another 100 community events each year, which includes open mics, writers' workshops, jams, and educational programs. As you may suspect or may know, we have been closed down. Our doors have been closed since March 14th, I believe, at this point. And so nothing happening in the real world there, but we are doing these online things and happy to be doing that and connecting with y'all through that. These shows that are happening at 4 every day are free, but we do encourage you to tip or donate. I'll be posting some links to the Warming House's PayPal and Venmo, and everything that we receive, we give 80% to the artist, and 20% goes to help us keep going. What else? I think that's about all I can think of at the moment. So now let's turn to Fred, and welcome again, Fred. Good to see you.
It's good to be here. I was pumped when we got asked to play the stage. I've been trying to get into the Warming House for some time. My partner in crime, Mike Chu, who also builds banjos, Dogwood Banjos, look them up. They're awesome. He helped us, and it's just criminal that this has all happened, and now we have to do it online instead of there in person.
Yeah, that's a shame. Yeah, you were gonna play in April, I think it was, and
yeah,
you had a full band gig that was.
Yeah, I think we were gonna have Mike, who plays guitar and banjo, and our either a bass with us, a stand-up bass, Craig Fralin Evans, or Christopher Becknell on fiddle. I can't remember who was lined up to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, we were excited.
Yeah, Yeah. Well, hopefully someday down the road we'll have a stage.
This won't last
Get
forever.
on again. So yeah. So what have you been up to during the last couple months here, Fred?
Well, same as everybody, just trying to keep on keeping on. I've been, in terms of playing music, I've been trying to live stream 2 to 3 times a week. Get on usually Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Sometimes I come up with a theme. Sometimes I just play whatever. In fact, I probably technically played more gigs since we've been in quarantine than I did much last summer. But, what else have I got to do? It's been a long, long winter, and it's just now feeling nice enough to get out and do some gardening.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. So are you able to get out at all? Or are you staying in place, or what's kind of been your
staying in place? The only time we go out is to stock up on groceries. There just doesn't seem to be a whole heck of a lot of point in pushing it. We don't see, especially considering this is only wave one by all accounts. So stay safe, stay indoors. Stay at home. We're lucky. We've got about 3.5, 4 acres behind us. So now that the weather's turned, we can get outside and still don't have to see people.
Yeah.
We miss all our friends. I can't go to practice. It sucks.
Yeah. Have you been getting together with your band virtually at all? Or?
No, we haven't found a streaming service that allows that without lag. It's the lag that sucks. I play a chord and 2 beats later, the next guy's coming on board. So it's the only one that I'm aware of that doesn't have lag costs money, and paying money right now is not the best thing in the world for us. With no money, well, up until recently, no money coming in.
Yeah, I get that for sure. So have you, with your band or solo, have you been writing, or do you have any records coming out? Was there anything like that on the works? Or
we had something in the works, yeah. In fact, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 7, 8, or 9 tunes that we'd done a nice first take on. They might have required a little bit of touching up or retakes, but we're not a track by track outfit. We're acoustic instruments, and we prefer to record by being in the same room, setting up the mics, and just going. And so that's kind of out the window right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Not some writing, some writing. I'll play 1 or 2 newer ones today, probably, but mostly revisiting tons and tons of old material.
Okay.
It's actually been kind of interesting. My personal quest has been trying to get better. Well, I've got this time on my hand. Well, let's see if I can get better at something. And then when this is all over, I can come out and be a better mandolin picker, a better performer.
Cool. Well, that certainly seems like a good way to make use of some of the time here. So.
Time will tell. It's not up to me to decide whether or not I was successful. It's up to you guys. So we'll see.
We'll let you know in the comments here as we go.
That's fair enough.
So great. Well, it's great to talk to you, Fred. I'm gonna turn things over to you, but before I do, at the Warming House, we have a tradition of introducing our acts by asking them a silly question, and the one I'm going to ask you is the one that I don't know the answer to, because we talked about one of the questions and I already got the answer, and now I want to know the other one. So here's the question for you, Fred. What musician, and it can be anyone living or dead, would you most want to have breakfast with?
Man, there are so many. My first instinct was to say Bill Monroe, because he's one of my absolute all-time favorite mandolin pickers. But I think I've read a lot about Bill, and I've talked to people who worked with Bill and knew him. And I think the guy that I would like to know better is an African-American performer back in the 20s by the name of Charlie McCoy. He played with the Mississippi Sheiks and a number of other bands, Mississippi Mudsteppers, and he was ahead of his time and phenomenal. He could play mandolin. He could play guitar. I believe he played some fiddle. I'd like to know more about Charlie McCoy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, again, really excited to have you here. Excited to hear your music.
I'm grateful to have the opportunity.
I'm going to jump off the screen right now, and everyone put your hands together for Fred Keller.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start you off with a couple of fiddle tunes. The first one is called The Snake River Reel, and I learned it from a fella by the name of Dave Heiler that I used to play with up here. He passed away in 2007, and I like to play it because it reminds me of him. And the second one is called Wake Up Josie. It's a tune that I forgot that I wrote until about last week. Started to lose my pick there at the end. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Fred Keller. I usually play with a band called the Skally Line, which is the core of it is me and Mike Chu. We usually have Craig Evans playing some bass and Christopher Becknell on fiddle when we get to play with the expanded version. But also I play solo a fair amount too. I'm going to do you one that I wrote a number of years ago called the Red River Carts. And this is my homage to the Métis people. And the Métis people are folk that Minnesota has largely forgotten about. When the Voyageurs finished up the fur trade, and by finished up, what I mean is they pretty much hunted and traded every last beaver, marten, and fur-bearing critter in the North Woods. The French didn't just up and vanish and head back to France. They stuck around. In fact, many of them married into Dakota and Anishinaabe tribes. And after a generation or two of being intermarried, they were essentially a separate people. Métis is a French word that means mixed. They were not quite European. They were not quite Native American. They were somewhere in between. And over the course of many years now, Métis people still exist in Canada. They are a recognized group of folks. They have their own language called Michif, which is a mixture of Cree and French. They have their own set of fiddle tunes and songs. They nearly had their own country back in the late 1800s. A man named Louis Riel nearly was successful in leading the Métis people to forming a land that would have been called St. Rupert's Land. It would have extended roughly from Manitoba all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Well, here in Minnesota, the Métis people lived along the Red River in the Northwest. And I wrote this song originally. It was just sort of a fun, peppy little folk tune about the Red River carts, because what they would do was hunt bison all spring and summer, and in the fall, they'd build these carts. The wheels were 6 feet tall. They held somewhere between 800 and 1,000 pounds of fur, and they would get into these big, long trains pulled by oxen and walk down to St. Paul to trade for the goods that they needed to survive the winter. Now, well, you hear my dogs going on there. Somebody's at the door. Go figure. Anyway, so the Métis folks had these carts that they would travel, and it took them 40 days to get from Pembina, which was where they were more or less centered and headquartered, all the way down to St. Paul and back. A few years back, I traveled up to Kittson County to talk to folks. I'd never been there. And I met a man named Ed Jerome, who is a direct lineal descendant of a man named Andre Jerome. Andre Jerome was a Métis man. He traded in furs. He also fought with Louis Riel. And I added a verse specifically because of him, because he was captured by the British during the fighting. And he was held at the Stone Fort, Fort Barry in Winnipeg. And they tortured him. They sweated him in the middle of January. They called it sweating. They took off most of his clothes and made him break rocks from big ones into little ones. So this is the Red River Carts. Well, the Red River Carts roll on, boys. Yes, the Red River Carts roll on over hills and plains through snow and rain. The Red River Carts roll on, boys. Oh, the Red River Carts roll on. Well, the old ways have been lost, boys. Old ways have been lost. I used to trade a belt for a rifle and a belt. Now it's all priced at a cost, boys. All the old ways have been lost. And the Red River Carts roll on, boys. Red River Carts roll on over hills and plains through snow and rain. The river carts roll on, boys. The Red River Carts roll on. And the long ways to St. Paul, boys. It's a long ways to St. Paul. So load 'em up high and off we'll fly. 40-day one-way haul, boys. It's a long ways to St. Paul. And the Red River Carts roll on, boys. Red River Carts roll on over hills and plains of snow and rain. The Red River Carts roll on, boys. Oh, the Red River Carts roll on. Then the wheels they squeal and groan, boys. Yes, the wheels they squeal and groan. They complain all the way, both night and day. Oh, we get near a moan, boys. Wheels they squeal and groan. And the Red River Carts roll on, boys. Red River Carts roll on over hills and plains of snow and rain. The Red River Carts roll on, boys. Yes, the Red River Carts roll on. sweat me on the stone for the rocks. Boys, yes, they sweat me on the stone for the rocks. Well, in hell with a Louis Riel, but they could not make me talk. Boys, oh, they sweat me on the stone for the rocks. And the Red River carts roll on. Boys, yes, the Red River carts roll on. Over hills and plains of snow and rain, the Red River carts roll on. Boys, Red River carts roll on. And when our travel's over, boys, yes, when our travel's over, it's a rockin' up the bow and off they'll go, oh, and the reel and roll, boys, when our travel's over, and the Red River carts roll on, boys, Red River carts roll on, over hills and plains of snow and rain, the Red River carts roll on, boys, Red River carts roll on, la charrette la rivière rouge vive, charrette la rivière rouge vive, car monte la plaine dans la neige la pluie, la charrette la rivière rouge vive, charrette la rivière rouge vive, the Red River carts roll on, boys, Red River carts roll on, over hills and plains of snow and rain, the Red River carts roll on, boys, Red River carts roll on, yes, the Red River carts roll on, I said the Red River carts roll on. Well, there you have it, the Red River carts. All right, time to switch mandolins. I've got a little stable over here to my left, and this one is a fun one. This particular mandolin, for those of you who have had any experience in healthcare and are over, say, 30 or 40, you might recognize this. This mandolin is called the Commodium, written right there. Made by a fellow in California named Keith Carey out of a metal bedpan, a hospital dinner tray lid, and a fork to hold the strings on. And it's got a resonator cone in it. And the idea was to make it sound like the old banjolin that the old blues guys used to use. Now I'm going to tell you a little story and sing a song about a fellow named John Koski. I live in Sandstone, Minnesota, and about somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 miles northwest of me, there's a little town called Finlayson. Finlayson was named after a Scotsman, although there are Finns there. In fact, Mr. Koski was a Finn, and in 1920, Mr. Koski was 16 years old. Mr. Koski had a dream at 16 years old. He dreamed of getting his hands wrapped around the steering wheel of a Model T Ford. The Model T had been out for only about 5 or 6 years at that point, and he wanted one in the worst way. The problem was money. You see, his family wasn't about to start paying him for farm work that he'd been doing for free. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot of jobs out here in the sticks for a well-intentioned young man, but he found one. He actually found one in Sandstone, Minnesota, right here, about 13 to 15 miles away. At the quarry, the Kettle River Quarry, between roughly 1880 and 1940, there was a sandstone quarry. That's why the town's got its name. Right along the Kettle River, they would mine these big slabs of sandstone off the cliff walls, and then they would either make cobblestones out of them or building blocks. In fact, James J. Hill's mansion in St. Paul is made out of our sandstone. Was a tough job and not really a place for a 16-year-old boy. And I've heard stories about men who fell into the rock crusher. And once you fall into the rock crusher, that's pretty much it. In the main quarry, they use these derricks made out of a huge spar of wood held in place by guy wires, these cable-thick wires. But every now and then, those wires would snap and go around the quarry like a human weed whipper. So not a safe place, not a good place to work, but he found a job there. And you can see his dilemma now because he didn't have a way to get there. He didn't have a car yet, Well, what he did get his hands on was a wooden-rimmed bicycle, which you can still see in the Ascove Pine County History Museum up in Ascove, Minnesota. And he rode that bike to work every day, 7 days a week, 12 months out of the year for 3 years. Well, I rattle on the gravel on my way to work. Yes, I rattle on the gravel on my way to work. I said a wooden limb bike is all I can afford, so I'm saving up my money for a T-Model 4. Oh, well, the Kettle River Quarry pays $1 a day. Yes, the Kettle River Quarry pays $1 a day. I'm a stone splitting drill toting handy boy, Lord, and I'm saving up my money for a T-Model 4. Oh, well, hey, Johnny, do you hear the whistle blowing? Said, hey, Johnny, when don't you hear the whistle blowing? Oh, well, I gotta get home in time to finish my chores, 'cause I'm saving up my money for a T-Model 4. Pedal so hard. Hey, Johnny, why do you pedal so hard? Well, my good gal won't ride up on my handlebars, so I'm saving up my money for a T-Model 4. She's made of sleek black steel with a 20-horse motor. She's made of sleek black steel with a 20-horse motor. Now you get your sandy boots up off my running board. You're just me and my baby and my T-Model 4. Mr. John Koski. 3 years he rode that bike to work, and in the third year he had enough money to buy himself that car. So he quit the job at the Kettle River Quarry, bought himself a T-Model 4, and took up farming out in Finlayson, Minnesota. Lots of old stories in Finlayson about Mr. Koski, including the time that he hunted a wolf on foot from Finlayson to Hayward, Wisconsin. Interesting fella, and I never had a chance to meet him. Mr. John Koski. Yes, indeed, Mr. John Koski. All right, let's do one where you guys can participate a little bit. This is a tune that I wrote a few years back. I was part of a Smithsonian project. Museums on Main Street. Sandstone had one of the exhibits. The topic was waterways. I won't go into all the details. My job, though, was to interview people. I had sort of the social aspect. I talked to people up and down the Kettle River watershed, Native Americans from the Mille Lacs Band, old timers, newcomers, and I learned some really interesting things and heard some great stories. But we didn't have a song, so I decided I'd better write a song. And what came out was a little tune called Drifting Down the Kettle. The Kettle River is an absolutely staggeringly beautiful river, especially through Banning State Park and Sandstone here at Robinson Park. It's a little bit like up north, the north shore of Lake Superior being transported here to east central Minnesota. And in fact, I worked, there's a number of rapids. The Kettle River is one of the only Class 4 rapids in the state of Minnesota. After the snow melts, it gets really rough, and people have drowned and died on these rapids. Blueberry Slide, the Dragon's Tooth, Mother's Delight, and Hell's Gate are 4 of the 5, and I don't remember the 5th one. At any rate, there's a part for you, because I wrote this and I thought, my God, this needs a horn section. I don't know any horn players. So when you catch the melody, I'll leave a space for us all to do a little bit of mouth trumpet. And mouth trumpet is just as simple as putting your lips together and doing this. You get the idea? All right. Here it is, a drifting down the kettle. Kind of a Tin Pan Alley style song. Well, a drifting down the kettle in a leaky canoe with you. I'm floating down the kettle in a leaky canoe with you. I bailed out all of my cares and woes and washed them up on the bank. Oh, drifting down the kettle in a leaky canoe with you. Only you. Off we'll glide down Blueberry Slide, we'll brush the Dragon's Tooth, hang a little ride at Mother's Delight, and then we'll skate to Old Hell's Gate, lazy water laughing on the leaky canoe with you. Fingers gently tapping on the leaky canoe with you. I'm floating while I hold your hand in mine. I never want to land again. Oh, drifting down the kettle in a leaky canoe with you. Only you. Off we'll glide down Blueberries. We'll brush the Dragon's Tooth. Hang a little ride at Mother's Delight. And then we'll skate to Old Hell's Gate. Here we go. Everybody. Off we'll glide down Blueberry Slide, we'll brush the Dragon's Tooth, hang a little ride at Mother's Delight, and then we'll skate to Old Hell's Gate, drifting down the kettle in a leaky canoe with you. Floating like a kettle in a leaky canoe with you. I bailed out all of my cares and woes and washed them up on the bank. Well, drifting down the kettle in a leaky canoe with you. Only you. That's a little bit of silliness about the Kettle River. I'm just going to keep this motoring along because I've got so many songs I was hoping to get in and just never enough time. Now this is a different mandolin. I keep this cross-tuned to the key of A, so it's just got a big old drony A sound. This is my old mandolin, 1929 Gibson. And I'm going to do this song, a Depression song from the era of the Depression. I heard about this story from a newspaper dated 1955 in the aforementioned Pine County History Museum. And it was about a man, nameless man, who had apparently walked 300 or 400 miles to Moose Lake, Minnesota, to try to find a man named Charles R. Grace. Apparently this man found Mr. Grace, knocked on his door, apologized, handed over every dollar he had to his name at the time, which was apparently about $90, and in today's money, that's about $90. And then he walked away. Now, the reporter did a little bit of digging, and he found out that about 30 years earlier, in a little town called Kingsdale on the eastern side of Pine County, there was a hotel owned by a man named C.R. Grace, Charles R. Grace. This was also during the height of Prohibition. And apparently, just over the St. Croix River in northwestern Wisconsin, there were about 15 to 20 moonshine stills operating full tilt, supplying much of the Twin Cities with hooch. People would drive up, and I've talked to old-timers who confirmed this. They would drive up in as big a car as they could get. They'd load it up to the gunnels as much as their springs could stand with hooch, and they top it off with old rotting vegetables or dead chickens so nobody would want to search the car. And then they had enough booze to get back. But that made Kingsdale essentially a crooked town, and Mr. Grace was an honest man. So here's his story called Looking for Grace. I spent my days on crooked roads and wicked ways at the moonshine stills with the rough, rowdy man. I sold amnesia by the can to the river rats and the logging man in Kingsdale, where a bullet made the law. Little bird, light on me, break this chain and set me free. Aching my bones, lies on my face. I'm on the long road, looking for grace. Now C.R. Grace kept an honest end, and he dreamed the town was free of sin, but he called the law for that. He had to die. Yes, he ordered it clean on a Monday night, and filled the pail with dynamite. I set the fuse, sat back to watch it blow. Little bird, light on me, break these chains, set me free. Aching my bones, lights on my face. I'm on the long road, looking for grace. Oh, well, the blast blew every window out, but from the fire there came a shout. 'Twas Grace alive, leading frightened children free. Oh, well, shards of glass are like broken stars washed my face and soul the scars. I turned ran from shame at what I had done. Little bird, looking for your raise. Oh, well, 30 years I ran the thing. 30 years I dragged that chain that bound me to the Soiree hotel. Another man can only be so strong. A man can only run so long from the shadows of the deeds that he has done. Little bird, light on me, break these chains, set me free. Taking my bones, lies on my face. I'm on the long road, looking for the rain. Little bird, light on me, break these chains, set me free. Taking my bones, lies on my face. I'm on the long road, looking for grace. All right, little true story about mayhem during the Depression up in Kingsdale. Kingsdale no longer exists as a town. It used to be kind of a hopping place, post office, train depot. It's just two dirt roads across in the middle of a swamp these days. I'm going to do you one now, another Depression era song, kind of. The story that I heard about this was set during the Depression. During this time, it became very expensive to make new clothes, and most farmers made their own clothes. They bought fabric and made their own clothes. But during the Depression, money was tight. People were scratching for nickels and dimes. People were living close to the bones. And what happened was, because flour was sold in cloth bags, cotton cloth bags, they started making clothes out of flour sacks. Of course, they would use the flour up first, and then they would take the cotton bags and use them to make clothes, dresses, and so forth. Now, this is the cool part to me. The companies, the Gold Medal and all the other various flour milling companies in Minneapolis and elsewhere, got wind of this. And what they started doing to help people out was packaging up their flour in prints, floral prints or stripes or what have you. They would also, in fact, put patterns, sewing patterns right on the flour sacks so that people could use them as is, and they didn't have to make it up. Anyway, without further ado, this is a song called The Flour Sack Dress. I'm thinking about calling it my made-to-measure General Mills Sunday Go-to-Meeting blue and yellow flour sack dress song, but I'm not sure that would fit on a CD. When I was a young girl, I wore my hand-me-downs. All patches past the patches, and the dust storm stained them brown. Brown as a berry from working, well, brown as a berry from the dirt. I never knew that I was poor till we took our cue at church. Well, Mama went to market on a Monday to fetch a few sacks of meal, and she brought it home in 7 yards of General Mills percale. Golden yellow butterflies on a field of cornflower blue. My eyes lit up when Mama said, I'm gonna sew a dress for you. Well, you're like a jacket, dear. shook like a leaf on a tree. The only thing that I could say was, look at me, look at me, look at me. I can fly like an eagle, I can soar up to glory, I can sing with the heavenly blessed. In my made-to-measure General Mills Sunday go to beating blue and yellow flower sack dress. I smile just like a daffodil. I skip like a blue-tailed fly. Them town girls stopped there laughing as we went strolling by. I held my head up high and proud so mama she could see. It was more than just a brand new dress her hands had given me. I could fly like an eagle, I could soar up to glory, I could sing with the heavenly blessed. In my made-to-measure General Mills Sunday go to meet a blue and yellow flower sack dress. I can fly like an eagle, I can soar up to glory, I can sing with the heavenly blessed. In my made-to-measure General Mills Sunday go to meet a blue and yellow flower sack dress. I wore that dress till it felt like tissue and the sun would shine right through. I saved it through the long, long years to hand it down to you. My little baby swallowtail, my little blue-tailed fly. I'll snuggle up beneath your quilt of daffodil and sky. I stand in the cradle like a jacklit deer, I shake like a leaf on a tree. And the only thing that I can say is, look at you looking up at me. I can just fly like an eagle, you can soar up to glory, you can sing with the heavenly blessed. In my made-to-measure General Mills Sunday go to meet in blue and yellow flower sack dress. You can fly like an eagle, you can soar up to glory, you can sing with the heavenly blessed. In my made-to-measure General Mills Sunday go to meet in blue and yellow flower sack dress. Well, there you have that. That one is a new one, and I hope you enjoy it. I love the story about that. We could use a little bit more partnership between customers and large corporations, and that is a really interesting example. All right, time is pushing on, so I got far more tunes than I have time for. We'll do a couple here. This one is for the gardeners. I've finally gotten outside. And, of course, the first things that come up are weeds. And the most ubiquitous of them all is this fella. This is one of those weeds you just make your peace with. You can't eradicate him. There's nothing you can do. There's no nuclear option that will ever get rid of Mr. Charles. So this song is called Creep Along Charlie. Sneaky and a sneaky through the grass. I said, creep along, Charlie, creep along, just a sneaky and a sneaky through the grass. If you ever stop a sneaking, wind up on your gas, yes, yes. Well, Charlie never hurried. I said, Charlie, take his time. Charlie never worried about a thing. Charlie never hurried. So Charlie take his time. Charlie never worried about a thing. When all the women know that creeping Charlie is a king. You can snap him, you can pull him by the root, you can clip him, you can cut him, you don't mind. You can snip him, you can snap him, you can pull him by the root, you can clip him, you can cut him, you don't mind. And every bit of Charlie make another creeping Charlie vine. kitchen. I said, Charlie, in the hallway. And now Charlie come to creeping up the stairs. And if he gets into your garden, girl, you better say your prayer. Creep along, Charlie, creep along, just a sneaking and a slinging through the grass. Creep along, Charlie, creep along, just a sneaking and a slinging through the grass. Now if you ever stop slinking, gonna wind up on your yes, yes, yes. Said if you ever stop slinking, gonna wind up on your yes, yes, yes. Yes, indeed. Creep along, Charlie. There's just no point to trying to pull him all up. You just sort of find a little balance with Mr. Charles. All right. I think I got time for two more. This is another new one here. I'm going to pull up a cheat sheet. I apologize for that, but this one is fairly new, and this one is informed by, but not completely addressing today's little quarantine pandemic kind of a thing. It just sort of, it fits. Raindrops patter the window pane, shiny little rivers like silver chains, so beautiful, but heavy just the same. And I give $1,000,000 just to hear somebody say my name. Almost hear the music and I start to hum. I open up my mouth, but the words won't come, so beautiful, but farther than the sun. Well, if I knew that I was feeling, I wouldn't sit alone and strong. Now if a tree falls down, do you hear a sound? And if you don't play, how can you lose? If you don't go swimming, you can't get wet. And if you don't sing, do you have the blues? Well, the snowflakes flutter and the cold wind blows. Jack Frost turns the trees to bones, so beautiful, but silent as a stone. Well, it pains me to admit it, but I reap as I have sown. Now if a tree falls down, do you hear a sound? And if you don't play, how can you lose? If you don't go swimming, you can't get wet. And if you don't sing, do you have the blues? The storm winds blow open my front door, up and down the neighborhood 100 more, so beautiful. We walk out on the porch. Well, everybody whispers together, we made a rule. If a tree falls down, do you hear a sound? And if you don't play, how can you lose? If you don't go swimming, you can't get wet. If you don't sing, do you have the blues? If a tree falls down, do you hear a sound? If you don't play, how can you lose? If you don't go swimming, you can't get wet. And if you don't sing, said if you don't sing, and if you don't sing, do you have the blues? All right. I barely got time for one last one, and then I'm going to leave you alone. This one is called Don't Make No Fuss Over My Remains. In 1904, a woman named Margaret Stitt passed away. She was an African-American woman. There was a 2-paragraph obit that said, "Don't make no fuss over my mains." They wrote it in the vernacular as she spoke it. Well, I don't have time for the full story, but this woman sounded so remarkable. And if you, she was a laundress. She lived on South 9th Street in downtown Minneapolis. She was reported to have a large number of both black and white friends. She had also apparently, quote, a not inconsiderable amount of money to leave. My time upon this good green earth is drawing to a close. I bid you fine farewell. I go to take my last repose. Mr. William Fraser, my dear friend, I charge you thus. Hold the service in your house, a church I do not trust. The Reverend William Sampson Brooks will pray me to the Lord, but keep my coffin covered, made of simple clean pine boards. Bring my friends around me, white or black, do not restrain. Don't make no fuss on my remains. Don't you make no fuss over my remains. I don't go to any trouble. Keep it simple, make it plain. Meekness and humility have been my life's refrain. But don't you make no fuss over my remains. Go get your J. Hill to hand out 10-cent cigars. Let go ask Georgie Pullman for his fanciest cars. Well, Governor Van Zandt can lead a steamboat parade. But don't you make no fuss over my remains. Don't you make no fuss over my remains. I don't go to any trouble. Keep it simple, make it plain. Meekness and humility have been my life's refrain. But don't you make no fuss over my remains. Well, I've seen the Colonel Colder and the old fighting first. I would fire 21 guns off the back of my hearse. Well, how about a Lowry streetcar in my honored name? But don't you make no fuss over my remains. I don't make no fuss over my remains. I don't go to any trouble. Keep it simple, make it plain. I'll make the same humility have been my life's refrain. But don't you make no fuss over my remains. Well, a pack about a party in the Twin Cities streets. Oh, Keller and Hormel might want to pass out beats. I want a river of Blake's beer playing in the water mains. But don't you make no fuss over my remains. Don't you make no fuss over my remains. I don't go to any trouble. Keep it simple, make it plain. Meekness and humility have been my life's refrain. But don't you make no fuss over my remains. Now please don't spend what time remains a weeping o'er my corpse. I want you all to laugh and yell and sing until you're hoarse. So how about a eulogy via my friend old Mark Twain? Don't make no fuss on my remains. Don't you make no fuss over my remains. Don't go to any trouble. Keep it simple, make it plain. Meekness and humility have been my life's refrain. Don't you make no fuss over my remains. I said, baby, don't you make no fuss over my remains. Thank you, folks. I made it just in time. I cut out all the breaks. It's been a pleasure, a sincere pleasure. Thanks to everybody at the Warming House. Be generous to the Warming House. Let's keep them alive. Take care now. Bye-bye.